Hi, Reddit travelers, what is your creepiest hotel story? While in the Isles of Scotland, we stayed in a B&B. It was owned by a couple. The bedrooms were extremely well done and beautiful, but there were signs to not touch on everything. To use the shower, you would have to ask the couple, and the internet ended at 11 p.m. The woman would also check on everyone at random times in the night. We would hear creeping in the hallway to ensure everyone was sleeping, and not doing illegal things like using the internet. When we checked out of her B&B, she came into our room and said that we stunk, and opened the window to prove this and demanded money immediately. Another traveler was kicked out of the B&B because the checkout time was 10 a.m., and they were forced to stand outside. She wouldn't even let them stay inside, in the thunderstorm while their taxi came. Another traveler had to go a check. We were in an isolated place, to pay for the room, and she took their bags and wouldn't give them back. But on the way out, she asked everyone if they enjoyed their stay. I was traveling out of the country right after finishing a huge 5-day work event where I had about 10 hours of sleep during the 5 days. I got to the motel, which was kinda run down, and the carpet and blankets were damp, but I was so exhausted I didn't even think about it. I fall asleep immediately at like 8 p.m. local time. At maybe 11 p.m. or so, I get a call from the motel phone saying there's been a noise complaint. I tell them that's impossible, and I've been sleeping. They ask me if maybe it's someone else in the room, and I tell them nope, I'm here alone, so there's no one else making noise. They ask me again if I'm sure I'm alone and not causing any noise. I say yes again. Fall back asleep immediately. When I woke up and thought about it some more, I realized how weird the entire interaction was. I could hear absolutely no noise anywhere nearby, and I don't know why the motel staff would need to clarify so many times that I was alone. Apparently, they never called. So, I assume it must have been someone calling the rooms to see who was in them and how many people. I've always been so glad to use the extra latch chain lock. We found a hotel in Yangon, Burma, for the day we got there for cheap. They mentioned the rates were low because maintenance was done on several floors. We sleep fine, wake up and head to breakfast. We met some Germans who had also stayed the night in our hotel at breakfast. They said they had not slept well because someone woke them up to move them from the floor they were on in the middle of the night. We, us and the Germans, found out later that they had been moved because they were on one of the levels reserved for maintenance, and part of the maintenance included gassing the rooms for bugs. During the middle of the night, they were going around the rooms shoving the gas nozzle or whatever under the doors and letting them run. They wound up killing the 2 people next to the Germans before they realized they'd accidentally booked people on that floor. Thankfully, we weren't on that floor, but it has always stuck with me how seemingly easy it could have been to get mixed up in that. Family vacation. 1 a.m. My brother and I had just finished watching The Shining on TV. Neither of us had seen it before. We heard someone trying to open our door. No one else was supposed to have keys. Someone tried swinging the door open, but the hotel lock stopped them. They tried to open it multiple times, banging the door against the lock. After a few tries, they gave up. The hotel desk clerk accidentally entered the wrong room for their keycards. It was the best way I saw The Shining. I can't be scared more than that from that movie. When I was 12, I stayed in a motel with my mom on a road trip. We were in the middle of nowhere in Texas at a motel with a decent rating in our guidebook, and it was cheap, so we went for it. In the middle of the night, the owner knocked on the door and told us we had to leave because he wanted the room for someone else. My mom was outside arguing with him while I was gathering our things, and I was terrified because I heard him start yelling. I looked out the window and saw about half a dozen bikers in vests appear out of nowhere, maybe in a nearby room, and start confronting the owner. My mom came inside quickly, and we watched them start harassing the guy, saying things like, "She's paid to be here. You're going to let her stay tonight. We don't want to ever hear shit like this from you again." and the owner was saying things like, "I don't want any trouble." Everybody left fairly quickly, and we didn't ever hear anything about it the next day at the checkout. We couldn't sleep well because we were so shaken up, but it was better than getting in the car again. Thank you, Anonymous Biker Gang. In university, I was renting out a 6-bedroom house and found out it was being demolished after we left, so I threw a massive party as a DJ. I hired a security door guy that I later found out was connected with the Hells Angels and the Mongols. I think it was a long time ago. Anyway, a lot of both groups showed up. It was a weird mix of students and massive bikers. One asshole broke a window and tried to sneak in, and the bikers caught him and tossed him out. Not sure what happened to him after that. Then the cops showed up and drove about 4 cars onto my lawn with sirens blazing as I was talking to one of the higher-up guys, and he just said, "Watch this," and walked out and put his arm around one of the cops, who hugged him. Then they all left us to continue partying. It never bothered us again. I'm glad the bikers were there. They saved the day, didn't cause any trouble, even though there were rival gangs there, and they all paid the cover and were respectable. A friend and I once stayed at a pretty fancy B&B for the night. The lady who owned it was lovely but would appear out of nowhere. We'd be sitting alone in a large room with one doorway, and suddenly she was in the room with us. Either this joint had secret doors, or something creepy was going on. She seemed to know things that we'd said or done as well. The thing that tripped us out the most was hearing someone trying to open our door. During the night. She was super lovely, and the building was beautiful, but we were relieved to check out the next morning. I arrive at a secluded coastal hotel south of Marmaris, Turkey, around 2 a.m. It had been a long day in Istanbul, followed by a flight and long bus ride into Marmaris, where I haggled with non-English-speaking taxi drivers, who were unaware that this small resort existed. When the taxi pulls up to the hotel, it's on fire. When the owner, standing out front, sees us, he opens the taxi door excitedly. "You come. I have a nice room for you." I point out that the hotel is on fire, but he gestures and says, "Small fire. No problem. You come." I am utterly exhausted. I follow the owner into the hotel, stepping over fire hoses, waving away smoke, and passing firefighters as they run up and down a nice staircase. We pause at the second-floor landing, and the owner tells me, "See. Fire only on this side of the hotel. On this side no fire. You come." My exhaustion removes every ounce of common sense, and I follow him to a room down the hall. The room is indeed fire-free. I quickly scan the "in case of fire" message on the back of the door, checked the window escape, and promptly passed out with my gear and boots on. In the morning, I awake, alive, wondering if I dreamt the entire thing. I go down the smoky stairs past the charred and other side of the hotel. The owner is so happy to see me, still alive, that he eats breakfast with me. I returned a few years later, and the hotel fully recovered. I stayed in a B&B in Pennsylvania that seemed cute enough. They had a wall of antique dolls in the main room but no signs of weirdness. That's until we were settled in the room. I noticed some scratches on the floor near a bookcase and realized it was a secret door after some inspection. When I asked the owner, who gave a creepy vibe, if it worked, he said yes and showed me that it opened to their office, a cluttered room with a computer and piles of crap. It had a lock on its side, and when I asked if it was on my side, he smiled and said, "No." When I showed some concern that there was an unlockable entrance to my room that was camouflaged that they didn't tell me about, he just kept smiling. So that night, no sex, fear of cameras, and I barricaded the door and barely slept. When I was 12, my family took a vacation to Europe. At our hotel in Rome, there was this amazing indoor pool, and being a child my age, I would have spent the entire vacation there if I could. During one swimming excursion, Some random gentleman, probably around 40-something, comes over to me and starts tickling my feet. My mother is with me but is preoccupied with one of my other siblings. He also speaks English and starts teasing me for being ticklish and telling me I'm simply adorable. Through my giggles, I keep shyly asking him to stop. He doesn't and keeps teasing me and touching my feet and lower legs. This went on for maybe 2 minutes tops before my mom saw what was happening and went into super protective mode and told him to back. When I was 14/15, I went with my family to Las Vegas, and we stayed off the main strip in a 2-bedroom suite. It was a smaller casino hotel. My parents left to go out and enjoy the night while I stayed with my younger siblings. They slept in the bedrooms, and I watched TV in the living room. I dozed off around midnight, and when I woke up, I was in a stairwell outside of the hotel room. I had no shoes on. I had no cell phone. No room key. I went to the front office and told them I was locked out of my room, and they believed me and gave me a key. I still don't know why I was out there. To this day, I have never sleepwalked. I am still trying to figure out what happened. I may have done sleepwalk, or something happened during those hours that I cannot remember. But it was creepy enough for me to share. In Mexico, my girlfriend and I stayed a night in a hut in the jungle. No running water, no electricity. As we are from Central Europe, we are not used to dangerous wildlife, spiders, scorpions, etc. There was a beautiful cenote nearby, and at some point, it rained like crazy. The daytime was amazing. The night not so much. In our hut was a bed with a mosquito net with huge holes in it. It was pitch black in the hut as we lay down and got comfortable trying to sleep. I felt a bit creeped out and decided to check the hut for insects with my phone's flashlight. Bad idea. There were hundreds of big spiders all over the walls and ceiling. Not the night's sleep I had wrapped up like a mummy, but every piece of clothing we had. My spouse and I stayed at a massive hotel complex that consisted of one hotel that bought almost every other hotel around it. We bought the online special and were in one of the ancient acquisitions. This odd 4x4 piece of plywood was hanging down from the ceiling just enough so it felt like someone could watch you through the crack, but you couldn't see in it. We hung up the Do Not Disturb sign and went to tourists around. We came back, and the TV was on at maximum volume. We left and returned, and the shower curtain had fallen. Good thing it was only a one-night stay. That room just had the feeling of someone there. When I was about 4, my family was at the resort in St. Kitts. I was swimming with some of the friends I made there when one of them spoke of a woman at the pool, calling her retarded. I didn't know what that meant at the time. She had some mental disability. I don't know what it was. At one point during the swim, I was in front of her and out of sight of my parents. I don't remember anything leading up to this moment, but she told me, "Close your eyes, and you'll get a big surprise." I did, not knowing any better, and she started hitting the top of my head with her fist and holding me underwater. Luckily, my mom spotted this happening and stopped it. The woman who tried to drown me had a helper who was supposed to keep an eye on her but was found suntanning and not paying any attention. My mom lost it on her for not paying attention. This whole thing was more scary than creepy, but it has stuck with me ever since, so I thought I'd share. Not particularly creepy, but pretty bleak. Been in Australia for about a week and decided to go straight to a farm to tick off the farm work for the second-year visa. Arrived at this run-down house, with the internal walls covered in graffiti and reminiscent of a crack den. All the other lodgers look like broken men. Told that the weekly shopping run is for less than 2 more days, so here's a loaf of bread each. Start work the next day, picking runner beans, paid at $1.10 a kilo, busting my ass to make something like $50 in 14 hours. Slept in cramped beds in what we assumed used to be a living room, with plain bread for dinner. The next day, I did a few hours until my mate stood up like this. "I'm not having this," and we went back to Melbourne. I ended up in an amazing hostel with great people, earning $25 an hour, with memories I'll never forget. Horror shows averted. My wife and I stayed in a well-known hotel in London. The rooms were nice but had a door that allowed someone to travel between our room and the one next to us. To do so, you needed to open the door in my room, and someone had to open it in the neighboring room. There was only one handle on each door. One night I woke up in the middle of the night and thought I saw someone moving around. It was dark, and in the middle of the night, I thought it was my wife. The next morning, I found my separator door ajar. I was visiting NYC with my wife and 1-year-old. My brother had made the hotel reservation for us, and we thought it would be nice. We arrived, checked in, and then found our way to our room. The hallways were a maze, and it took us a few minutes to find our room. The room was pretty sketchy, but it was late, and we were tired, so we started to settle in. My wife had brought a quart of milk for our kid, and since the room didn't have a fridge, she asked me to take it to the front desk and ask them if they had a fridge we could use. I took the milk and headed into the maze hallway. I got a bit turned around but eventually found the elevator. I got in, hit the L button, and rode the elevator down. When the door opened at the lobby, I was in a dark, narrow hallway. I stupidly stepped out, confused as to what was going on. There were several doors on both sides of the hallway, but all were locked. I walked down the hallway and eventually started to hear music playing. After a few minutes, I turned a corner and almost ran into two big guys. I stopped and stared at them, wondering what was going on. After looking me up and down and pausing on the milk I was carrying, one of the two asked me, "What are you doing here?" I stared for a few seconds and said, "I'm just trying to find the lobby." He then escorted me to the entrance of what turned out to be a strip club. After exiting, I saw the hotel about half a block up the street. I took the elevator the strippers would take with paying clients and had no idea. I thought I was in the Twilight Zone for a few minutes. I once stayed in a B&B that had a shared bathroom. The first night I got up at probably like 2 a.m., and I was bursting for a pee. The bathroom was down the hallway, not too far, but it seemed like such an effort in my tired state. I got to the bathroom and opened the door, and there was this guy just standing in the bathroom, dressed head to toe in a mime costume. Face painted and everything. He was squatted down on the floor, but his trousers were still up. I looked at him for a second. He gave me a wave with a smile and began silently pushing. I ran back to my room, locked the door, and decided to pee in a bottle. I'm still trying to figure out if I was really tired and seeing things. It's the strangest thing I've ever seen. I checked into a hotel on vacation. Everything was going okay. I woke up one night to the erratic movement of the door handle as if someone was trying to get in or break the door down. It always happened in the dead of the night when in a deep sleep. As soon as I woke up, it would stop. I spoke to a hotel manager about it, and he told me it was a recently released patient from a mental institute who did this, as he still thinks he is locked up in the institute. A combination of not taking his medication and sleepwalking makes him randomly try and kick doors down within the hotel. The family was very wealthy and connected, and the manager didn't want to kick up a fuss for chucking out someone who could shut his business down very quickly. I left after a week because it got worse. I stayed in an Econo Lodge in Baltimore once, and the pic from the booking was different from the hotel I was in. It was next to an abandoned Red Roof Inn, constantly flooded with hookers, and a homeless shelter with no volunteers and many homeless people. My room smelled like mildew, had cigarette burns and blood stains on the blanket, and had some friendly rats scampering around. When I went to the front desk, the gentleman handed me a baggie of rat poison and said, "Sprinkle this. They will die." The following morning, as I stepped outside to the saving grace that was Dunkin' Donuts at the corner, a woman was peeing in the parking lot, conversing with her friends while they were hitting the pipe. The place was the worst. I thought I could be stabbed at any moment. Stayed in New York City recently. A couple of things happened in that room. During the night, our spare room key went missing. It was on the desk, and we turned that room upside down, looking everywhere for it, but never found it. The safe randomly stopped letting us into it. All our cash was there, and we were sure of the number. More of an annoyance than creepy, but still. The last one was we returned to the room one night, and our card wouldn't work in the door. We went to reception and sorted everything out, but when we got up, the room was locked by one of those latches swung to the side. We had a good fiddle with it once the repair person came up to try and get us in, and you cannot fathom how it locked itself. It wasn't a heavy latch, but it didn't swing. I was on a trip around Southeast Asia in 2012. Kay was staying with my traveling companion at this hotel guest house in Cambodia. It was the middle of the night, and we both woke up to the sound of our door handle jiggling. Then the door opened. My friend said, "What is this?" In a confused, just woken up state, this scared the person off. We needed them running away, and we asked each other if that just happened. To make things even stranger, I got up and locked the door, and we went back to sleep as if nothing had happened. What would have happened if we hadn't heard the person come in? As I said, the door was locked, and we heard the person trying to pick the lock or do whatever they did. And knowing people are home seems like a bad time to rob someone. I had to stay in a hotel overnight to take a class in the morning and was super sleepy. When I arrived, the room smelled like smoke. And I promptly called the front desk to tell them that it wasn't me. As tired as I was, I climbed into the stained duvet and felt something cylindrical and small at my feet. I thought it was a pen, and since I was practically asleep, I was like, cool, I need a pen in the morning anyway. So, I woke up, got ready, and remembered the pen. I pulled the sheets back, and it was a crack pipe. I was refunded everything for the room. The housekeeper was probably fired. A drunk guy at a hotel bar kept creeping on me and trying to demand that the bartender pour me drinks on his tab. I refused. I didn't give this guy my real first name, and not my room number, although he had already seen my last name on some work stuff I had with me. Nonetheless, that night I tried to fall asleep. My room phone rings, I answer it, and he slurs, "Your real name is Megalodon 319? He then goes on a drunken sexual rant, and I have to unplug the phone to get him to stop calling. With my last name, he got the hotel staff to tell him my real name, plus God knows what else, and give him my room phone number. I was livid. We were in Spain and left the town because Dad had to do some work at the library in a neighboring town. We came back late, and the hotel had moved all our stuff, down to the toothbrushes, from one room to a more expensive room, claiming that someone else had a reservation. We claimed bullshit and started packing. When they realized we were serious, they let us stay in the more expensive room at a lower rate. We had weirdo neighbors all over the place. Some Muslim guys always argue with their wives in the middle of the night after prayer. This guy would go out in the hallway and work with his hammer on a bench. Bang bang in the middle of the night. Dad once went out in his underwear and asked, "Need a hand?" The guy said, "Oh, I didn't know you were asleep." This was at a hotel in one of Singapore's nice, not so nice places. I am trying to remember when, but I went back to the hotel. Some other man was waiting in the elevator, but he didn't push the button, so I had to. At that time, I thought he was a lazy guy. He entered the lift, and he didn't push a floor either. Years of playing SS-13 have given me a healthy case of paranoia toward the actions of others, but I didn't jump to a conclusion yet. It might be he just was on the same floor as I stepped up. The hall split into two. Guy didn't go first, and he walked to follow only after I headed towards my room. Warning bells in my head. This may be how I die. He continued. He still followed me down the windy paths, and I just turned away from my room. He was still following. At this point, I acted as if I had headed in the wrong direction by mistake and rushed to my room. The man yelled behind me as if I had done something wrong. It got out the next morning. That was worrisome. I was in Spain, on a nice vacation, fancy hotel. In the room next to us was a young German couple. They were always partying at their fullest. One night I woke up because I had a nightmare. I heard sirens and screams. The hotel rooms have, next to normal ones, little windows to the inside of the hotel. It was open. I could hear every word from the police. The girl was drunk and brought another guy for sexy time to the room. The boyfriend wasn't amazed, enraged, and tried to stab the guy, but he accidentally killed the woman, who must have tried to stop him. It was pretty sad. I was the cause of a creepy hotel story. We had a class trip where the hotel we were staying at was a small collection of cabins in a woody, grassy area. Most of my classmates had agreed to run to a convenience store one evening, but maybe 6 to 7 of us needed to be aware of the plans. So, from our perspective, everyone was suddenly gone, and we were all alone. We were going around looking for people, and we split up. I went up to my cabin, which had a balcony on it, and decided to try and survey the area to see if I could spot a teacher or one of the staff there. I saw my friends on the ground, waved at them to say hi, and let them know where I was. What I didn't realize was that I had just washed my hair, so it was long, dark, hanging down, and kind of stringy looking, and I was wearing a white nightgown, and from the perspective of my friends on the ground, I was backlit by the light coming from inside the room. So, picture a ring-esque girl waving down at a group of preteens in the woods who suddenly think that everyone has vanished. I was working in New Zealand. I ended up at a hostel on the South Island, and everyone there was insane. The dorms they had were mini cabins, and the psychos in mine insisted that I never lock the doors to it. They would have random people in and out of the cabin all night drinking. There was no place to lock up things like your passport. The layout was bizarre. There was a bedroom with 2 bunk beds, neither of which had a ladder, and 1 single bed in the living room kitchen area. It was fun trying to sleep in that with people coming in every so often to get more alcohol. In our cabin, there were flies everywhere. There was even an ancient glue paper fly trap over the sink with a couple of 100 dead flies that they had just left there. It was disgusting to cook there, but there weren't other options. One of the guys in my cabin seemed especially disturbed. He would randomly make moaning noises while hanging out on the cabin's front steps. One time he screamed at someone that he was going to rape them. No one else seemed at all bothered by this. When I originally got to the place, I paid for a week, so I felt stuck there until the week was up. But eventually, I couldn't put up with my psycho roommates, so I complained, and they offered to move me to a different cabin for my last couple of nights. It turns out the next cabin had bed bugs. 14 years ago, I was visiting Taipei with my family. Our room was on the hotel's 5th floor. It was the 4th floor but labeled 5, because 4 is unlucky. In the dead of night, I woke up to the sound of knocking. But it wasn't coming from our door. It was coming from the direction of the windows. There were no balconies for a person to stand on, just normal windows. Which meant that someone knocking on that 5th floor window was impossible. And yet, the window knocking persisted. Mind racing, I wondered what inhuman, unnatural entity was there on the other side of the window. I was too terrified to move. It took all of my strength to whisper to my parents, who were over the next bed. "Do you hear that?" They woke up, and I repeated my question, my voice hoarse with dread. I didn't dare look in their direction, as their bed was closer to the window, and the unholy knocking. My parents laughed. The knocking sound had been my mother farting in her sleep. A year ago, I was in rural Arkansas. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone else. I usually sleep with all lights off and even pull out the wires of the alarm clock to avoid the light. I woke up in the middle of the night and realized the bathroom light was on. The tap was running, and the shower was too. I knew I couldn't have forgotten that. Still, I might have, as I was tired and sleepy. I turned them off, turned off the light, and went back to bed. I woke up after a couple of hours and saw that the lights were on in the bathroom. The tap was running, and so was the shower. The tub had clogged, and water had started seeping out. Scared shitless, I left the room and walked to the front desk. A half-asleep middle-aged lady was the manager, and her dog was asleep. Both of them came back with me. I explained the whole thing and showed her the tub. She was flabbergasted. The dog was still not in the room and was roaming outside. He came into the room and, without any trigger, started barking wildly in the bathroom. The lights went out in the bathroom while the rest of the room was still powered. We sprinted out of the room, but the dog kept barking in the bathroom while she kept shouting, "Charlie, Charlie." After 20 seconds of this, both of us decided to go back in for the dog. At this stage, I was almost shitting my pants. Charlie came running out of the bathroom, went to the corner of the room, sat there drenched in water, sweat, and whimpered. After what seemed like an eternity, the dog walked with us. I went back to the front desk and sat there for the night. I was staying at a hotel in Bisbee, Arizona, which is a ghost town. The hotel had a pretty grand entryway with a marble staircase, and there is a chip in the staircase that they claim came from Pancho Villa riding his horse through the hotel back in the day. Anyways, one night while I was there, I woke up very early, maybe like 4 a.m., for some reason, and I heard the faint sound of a piano, so I decided to investigate because I didn't remember a piano in the lobby of this place. I went downstairs to the lobby, and I couldn't hear it anymore, so I wandered back up the stairs to my floor and followed the sound down a dark hallway. It got louder as I got closer to the end, so I knew I was on the right track. At the end of the hallway, there was a door. I listened to it and heard the piano coming from behind the door. It wouldn't have been all that creepy had the door not been padlocked shut. Thanks for watching. Please comment, like, share and subscribe. The Internet Surfer on YouTube for more horror and scary stories.